Welcome to another Frank Friday. I would like to introduce my Frank Friday collaborator, Ellie Hayworth, who is the founder of Hayworth Communications Consultancy. Hayworth is committed to promoting intrepid ideas in art and design, and Ellie has grown her business to command a full scope of client services, including public relations, content development, business strategy, events, public speaking, you name it, Ellie can help. Today, we are sitting with Danielle Forest, who comes from Winnipeg, Canada, and Danny is Pace Gallery's Chief of Staff. Danny liaises between the CEO and staff at large, providing assistance in communicating the CEO's vision and business strategy to the various departments. Danny joined Pace in 2019 as Mark Glimshir's executive assistant and was pivotal in the opening of Pace's new headquarters in New York City, quickly leading the company's reorganization and expansion efforts. Additionally, and outside of corporate strategy, Danielle works on sales, programming, special events. For instance, she spearheaded Pace's East Hampton Gallery last summer. We are really excited to get this Frank Talk started. So Ellie, I will let you take over from here.
Amazing. Thank you, Karlina. And Danny, it is really wonderful to speak with you today.
You too.
Great. I'm particularly excited because you are taking on this amazing new role as Chief of Staff at Pace. You have, as Karlina mentioned, you had been at Pace previously in the role of Executive Assistant to Mark. And even before that, you were the Executive Assistant to Marion Goodman. And I think, just with the nature of our readership here with Art Frankly, it would be great to just hear a little bit about how the evolution of those roles has kind of played out over the course of your career.
Thank you. Yes, I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me. Working for Marion Goodman was actually a great start to it, and somewhere where I really was able to cut my teeth. And as most of us know, these galleries, these legacy galleries, these mega galleries, they still remain sort of personality cults, and they still are really kind of built around one individual's vision. And in that, you sort of trust them as a client, as a collector, as a museum, and you trust the program overall. And as such, you kind of have to have these individuals that are involved in every department, every facet. And as these galleries expand and grow, it becomes a little bit impossible. So a chief of staff role is something that, I don't think it exists at necessarily so many of these galleries. And it was something that kind of blossomed out of the executive assistant role. And because it was such a multifaceted position, and I would sit in on programming conversations or art fair conversations, or be involved in a sale, or, make sure an event was up to par. And I would sit in on these meetings slowly over time, not so much on behalf of Marion, that was a little bit of a smaller space, but with Mark, that's how it sort of evolved. It was a really kind of natural and holistic evolution for me. Mark was very empowering of me in this role, and he really encouraged me. And I had some hesitation around it because it wasn't a role that is sort of inherent in the art world, but it really was something that recognized a title that recognized the work I'd already been doing.
I love that. And I think, there certainly is an acknowledgement in that no one department in an art gallery, especially not an art gallery of the caliber of something like a Pace Gallery, which is, both international and, very historic in a number of ways, you're not siloed. So,
yes.
Certainly the events overlap with the art fair component, the curation and the sales go hand in hand. So I anticipate that having someone like you be at the conduit of kind of the operations is really something that is very valuable to the overall kind of growth of the program.
Yeah, and what's really wonderful about it is that I can sit in on these, various committees or with these various departments, and I really learn the challenges they might be having in carrying out the CEO's vision. Mark in particular, like just speaking to my experience with him, he's a really kind of, we always describe him as sort of a visionary. He's an ideas person. He's very creative. He loves to sort of push boundaries. He loves to challenge, challenge and push those parameters. And so with him, I'll go back to these departments and I'll find out, well, we've been instructed to kind of move things this way, but we're finding in our area that our expertise is telling us we can't do it this way. So then I can go back to Mark and say, you know what, it's not possible, or it is possible, but they prefer to take it this route. So it really is trying to empower those individuals in those departments back to Mark, and then, also bring Mark's vision to them when I can.
I love it. I think that's really, really interesting. And I'm sure, Danny, that you had quite a hand in a number of the different kind of accommodations and challenges that we have foreseen, or rather experienced as a society over the past year. So I think one of the questions that we've been asking a lot of our Frank Friday participants is, can you tell us a little bit about what it looked like to transition to remote work? And I don't know, just maybe identify some of the challenges, but also the opportunities that arose.
Yes. Personally, I'm somebody who, as most executive assistants know, you become really tethered to the person that you're working for.
Sure.
And the job isn't really just within those 9 to 5 hours, and you become sort of an extension of your life, becomes an extension of theirs in a lot of ways. And so you're really kind of intimately involved. And so I'm used to working around the clock a lot, and kind of just always having it in the back of my head, what's happening on this trip, and that meeting line up with that other meeting, and did he remember, did she remember, in Marion's case, to do this. And so when the pandemic first hit and all of a sudden nothing was happening, that was really difficult for me. So immediately some of the departments had to kind of pivot, and the exhibitions all changed to online, and we didn't have a really robust online program when the pandemic hit. So there were a lot of people that were now sitting and meeting and determining that. And I would sit in on those meetings naturally, but then I sort of invited myself to meetings that I didn't need to be a part of,
Sure.
because I couldn't really cope with not like having empty hours in my day. And I remember Mark calling me saying, like, it's okay, we're all just going to take a few days. It was spring break, I think, if everybody remembers too. So he's like, it's a natural time in our jobs that things quiet down too for a minute. So he's like, everyone just needs to take a breather, and we need to regroup in a few days. Everyone needs to focus on their health. Everyone needs to focus on their family. Sure. Everyone needs to focus on where they want to be, where they're situating themselves for this. Sure. And then from there, we started to pivot into the online, as most galleries and businesses worldwide did. And then we started to discuss, Mark's a big proponent of how to do these sort of strategic targeted outreach to various clients. And I think art fairs might have been something that sort of served that purpose. And so in this instance, with the art fairs all being canceled, how do we make sure that we're still connecting our artists to our collectors? And, how do we support our artists? How do we, be in touch with our collectors? And that's where East Hampton evolved from. And so I spent some time out in Long Island, and so he and I met, and we just kind of quickly launched it. And there were a lot of challenges in terms of permits and construction that could be done, and how many people could gather, and what was safe. And it was such a wonderful success. And I think our artists were really grateful to have a new space to work with and to develop exhibitions. And we connected with a lot of the clients, and I think it was great for all of the staff. It was a lot of work for a lot of people, and everybody really rallied around it.
I love that. That's really quite incredible. And I'm not sure how much of a hand you've had in the Palm Beach kind of satellite as well, but I actually happened to be there last weekend, and it's really refreshing to see you guys down in sunny South Florida as well.
We have an amazing team led by Adam Sheffer and with Leah Glimsher, who is there, and it's been wonderful. I mean, there's so many collectors there. It really kind of functions similarly to East Hampton. I've spent a little bit of time there. I'm going to go back down again at the end of this month, but it was interesting. It's really fun to see how innovative people become in these sorts of stages. It's a challenge, but everybody pivoted together, and everyone from the shippers to the art installers to the sales team to the communications department, made it work.
I love it. I also am always just kind of curious from like a culture standpoint. I mean, there is there is certainly a gallery culture, and when you get to all convene and kind of work together and, you know, workshop, if you will, those ideas on the ground, that lends itself to a certain kind of work ethic and a work culture. I'm curious, you know, how did you guys stay connected? Were there any kind of fun little activities that you implemented to kind of maintain the ethos and the, you know, the morale? Those are some of the things that I'm always curious about.
Yes, I mean, we had Zoom cocktails at the beginning, as everyone did. We had more staff, all staff Zoom calls than prior, because we weren't really using Zoom that much before. Mark's actually been a Zoom person for a little while, but you know, you have in-person meetings, and it's very hard to do a full staff in-person meeting. And so Zoom actually kind of brought us all together in a way that I think otherwise it wasn't really happening. Some of us are liking Zoom once in a while. I know we have a bit of fatigue from it, but it's nice it's nice occasionally to be able to get everybody onto one screen to workshop those ideas. And actually, that's one of my favorite parts of my job. And I think why I like working at Pace and for Mark so much is because he's somebody who constantly kind of lobbing new ideas, and some of them don't stick and some of them don't make sense, and some of them are incredible, and we sort of sit and we workshop them. And those meetings to me are most, you know, valuable and fulfilling.
I love it. I think that sounds just like fantastic. And you know, perfectly segues really to kind of the next question that I was teeing up for us, which is, you know, what are some lessons that have come out of, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, pandemic related or specific to your current role, but as you've kind of evolved through your career, what are some kind of key takeaways and lessons that you've really pocketed and, you know, have led to your professional growth?
One of the most simple lessons that, again, I think would be something that, you know, exists in the art world and it should exist everywhere else, was I interviewed with another gallery a very long time ago. And you know, it's a major gallery, and the you know, COO, or maybe it was a CEO, I can't remember, who I interviewed with, said something where, you know, they culturally have the kind of ethos where everybody does what needs to be done, and whether that means, you know, taking out the garbage or you know, meeting with the client, whatever needs to be done in that given moment for the success of the company. And historically, I think some of the art world has been siloed. I think it kind of functioned where individual dealers and directors sort of worked with their artists and with their clients, and you know, sometimes with the brand as a whole in mind. But I think that the greatest success comes out of everybody working for that same kind of goal of supporting the company.
A common goal.
Yeah, and that said, it's also just as valuable to know that sometimes there is a disconnect between how much work and how much labor is required of certain departments in order to kind of make these things happen. And, you know, where can we be more practical and pragmatic about it, and where can we, you know, work more effectively and work smarter versus working harder. And that's something that's been ongoing at Pace since I started, and I think the pandemic really highlighted for a lot of people, is where were we working too hard, and where was there being too much you know, pressure being put on certain individuals, and how can we all work with a, you know, more collaboratively and kind of with a better spirit going forward.
Yeah, I love that. I love every takeaway from that. And I certainly think it's something that, you know, young kind of upstart individuals in the art world, you know, we are kind of scrappy. We are ready to just pick up and do whatever we need to do. But it is, I think, also at the end of the day about a kind of a distribution of that kind of work ethic and everybody coming together for kind of that common goal.
Right.
So Danny, I anticipate you have a lot of structures and a lot of just like a lot of tenets in place that help you keep both yourself as well as Mark, as well as all of the individuals that you're working with, organized and kind of ready to, you know, armed and ready for any initiative that comes your way. What is one thing or two things that you do every day in your professional life that are really important and meaningful to you?
Oh, that's a good question. What do I do in my personal and my professional life? I personally, I'm not somebody who meditates, but I wish I were somebody who meditates, and there's a big culture of meditation at Pace, but I'm somebody who walks a lot. And I find that that's one of the few times I can disconnect from work in a real way. And I can kind of not look at a screen or feel that sort of need to check my emails or my messages. And it's
Absolutely.
usually a time when I, call my family back in Canada, or I listen to music. And so for that for me sort of serves a kind of meditative purpose, because it is hard to disconnect from work, especially when you care so much about it and you are so involved across different departments. Professionally, I have to constantly, review the schedule and then make lists and then cross off lists and then make new lists. One thing that I'm very focused on right now with a group of other leaders within the company is how to create better systems, which,
Sure.
it sounds like a little bit of a funky corporate term, but we want to really work hard to create systems of organization where it's very clear who you turn to for this, or it's very clear how this is achieved, or it's very clear how an exhibition is proposed in this avenue. And we're also really focused right now on actually establishing better growth pathways within the company. The art world is historically tricky to grow, to map out, and it's something where, for instance, becoming a sales director and becoming a dealer, there is no clear pathway. For some, they find success. For others, it's not something that you do this and you do this so you get this, or you
Sure.
do this and you do this so you get this. And so those sorts of organization structures and the pathways and the maps within that are something that we're really focused on better establishing. And that includes, better mentorships, better guidance from our senior team and for our junior team. We have the most incredible gallery assistants at Pace, and we want to see them succeed and stay with us for a very long time. So I guess, sorry, that I got off topic, but that's right now, aside from my lists and my calendar review every day, I really am trying to kind of constantly look at the organization of the company. Sorry, not to keep going. I spoke with someone recently about it and said, I sometimes feel like I'm constantly in this conversation about organization of the company, restructured organization. And they reminded me that it's something that all companies need to do, and they need to do it for a little while, and they need to revisit the conversation, see what worked, see what didn't. And it is something that is a labor intensive process. So right now, that's where my focus is.
No, I think that's great. And it's funny, I have kind of a multi-hyphenate consultancy. And so I do a lot of consulting across different avenues, but even in terms of the communication strategies that I implement, workflow is a term that comes up, truly 15 to 20 times a day. It's like, how do we come up with a workflow? And I think similarly, even kind of the job trajectory you mentioned is something, once those systems are in place, they're very empowering because individuals can kind of see themselves flourishing within these paths. So I think that that's a very refreshing response to a question that we pose a lot of our individuals for these Frank Fridays. And it's something that, I don't know, I think it's a very professional and meaningful place to be placing your time.
Yeah. Okay, good. We're excited about it. And when you look back, I've always found it challenging to navigate the art world and the various roles in it. And I'm lucky that, in this role of chief of staff, it's something where I get to wear a lot of different hats. And I do make sales, I do work on programming, I do get involved in sometimes more of the corporate stuff than I would like to, but it's all, meaningful, and it's all kind of tethered together. And so it's important that we kind of acknowledge how these structures are built and what the pathways are within them, and have a system of organization so people can flourish.
I think it's really great. And we always love to conclude with, it can be interpreted professionally and it can be interpreted personally, however you want to respond to the question. But one of the positive takeaways, we are harping on coming out of a very challenging 2020 year. And I think it's not going to change for a few months. But if there was one positive takeaway that you could say has come out of this, what is that to you?
The resetting of it all. We were on you know, to use your word, trajectory, where it was just constantly moving forward, no acknowledgement of any accomplishments, and it was expanding in this way that wasn't feeling holistic anymore. And it is so great to be part of a company where we're taking this moment and we're saying, what were we doing right and what weren't we doing right, and how can we reset this throughout the organization and move forward in a way that's positive and fulfilling and you know, kind and good for our entire team, so that everybody, you know, it comes into work and is content and fulfilled. So right now, I think we're in a great direction, and I feel very proud and challenged working at Pace. So it's been great.
Well, I think congratulations are certainly in
Thank
order
you.
because we're filming this and it will air in a few weeks. And I think by the time this airs, everyone will be able to publicly congratulate you on a very exciting new role. So Danny, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Karline.
Thank you, Danny.